Well, hey everybody, thanks for watching the Hot Zone. I'm Chuck Holton, and I've got a very special guest on the show today. It is Lior Gantz, and Lior is a Israeli former IDF. Obviously, every man in Israel is former IDF, but also is an entrepreneur now in Tel Aviv. And thank you very much for being here.
Absolutely.
And
it's my privilege.
I appreciate you coming on. And I want to talk to you specifically about the economic impact that is being wrought on Israel by this conflict. It's obviously very expensive to field and maintain a much larger army, but on top of that, you have the economic impact of, like, the Houthis down in the south, and the Hezbollah keeping people out of their homes in the north where they can't go to their jobs and can't contribute to the economy. So talk to me about the impact that it's had since October 7th last year.
Yeah. So Israel is a very tech-centered country since the fall of the Soviet Union, where about 1 million Jewish people from the Soviet Union came to Israel in one foul swoop, early 90s, helped with the real estate boom, construction boom. They brought a lot of talent. But on top of that, Benjamin Netanyahu, the current prime minister, became finance minister and opened up the economy to foreign investments. This is early 90s, and that opened us up to the internet boom. And there were a lot of companies still around, some of them in the billions, some of them trading on the NASDAQ, that started this phase of Israel being what Benjamin Netanyahu likes to call a startup nation. On top of that, another major trend that started back in the late 90s and goes on to today is the reliance that the IDF has on cyber and intelligence and whatnot. And because of that, you have 18 to 21-year-olds that come to the army, get access to information and the type of technology and special communications, patents, etc., that they wouldn't otherwise. And then they leave at 21, they have a great idea, they go and they start it. So that combination has built a very tech-centered country, plus demographics, so we have a lot of real estate. Real estate is not stopped, will not stop, and will continue. In fact, I would argue, I don't know how much you're familiar with this, but about 80 to 90% of the land in Israel is controlled by a quasi-governmental entity called KKL that started even before the country was formed, through donations from Jewry around the world, and it's still in the hands of government. I think that will start to be unfrozen, and new areas, new villages, new settlements, new cities will be built, because we're now officially 9-point-something million people, but we're going to be 10 shortly, and there's a population boom. People love to have families. So between those two, very strong demographics and a very tech-heavy country, our economy is really intact. So structurally, fundamentally, long-term, a boom economy. Right now, obviously, this being the most expensive war in Israel's history, it's 250 billion shekels so far. That's about $70 billion. So I believe the 2025 budget will include some ways in which the budget will have to bend itself to correct this, but still, debt to GDP and all these kind of ratios compared to these countries that are falling apart, like Italy, Spain, Greece, and all these European countries that don't have children and whatnot, that you can't compare us, even to your United States, you can't compare us in terms of debt to GDP. So I would say 2025, more hardship. As Benjamin Netanyahu says, we all go under the stretcher together, right, to carry the weight of the war, but ultimately, Israel is going to be one of the most important and richest countries of the 21st.
That's amazing. So can you tell me, do you know much about how much debt the Israeli government has? You know, the United States is getting to the point where the debt is our biggest line item now. Our national debt went up by $500 billion in about 2 weeks' time just now. And so it's out of control. And the government is actually doing a lot of things to try to hide the extent of the debt by reclassifying it as other things, unfunded liabilities, whatever, and hide it from the American people because it is such a huge problem. What's the debt look like in Israel?
It's very different. The United States of America, because of the Bretton Woods system, and because it no longer was important to remain intact after the fall of the Soviet Union, that's the only reason the Bretton Woods system was even created in the first place. And of course, after fracking and whatnot, the United States has been taken advantage of by its allies for many, many decades, at least 3 decades. And of course, Trump is looking to rearrange all the trade agreements and whatnot, because we live in a different world. And Israel doesn't have that. Israel does not have military presence in 200 countries, does not patrol the open seas, doesn't have to keep an extensive navy fleet and everything else. Plus, its liabilities internally, like you say, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, etc., are much more funded than in the United States, where it's based on the ability to get credit from countries
ourselves. We just print
the
it.
Federal Reserve, correct. So in Israel, it's a very different story. I think our debt to GDP is around 60 or 70 percent, which is very, very healthy in general. Both countries, both the United States and Israel, are on a path of growth. Israel is on a path of clear growth right now, but the United States, I believe, in 2 weeks' time, once President Trump gets back elected again, I think you're going to see a huge shift, because, as you know, in 1916, when the amendment to the Constitution came in with the income tax, you went the wrong way. The worst president in U.S. history was Barack Obama. The second one is Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson brought you the Federal Reserve. He brought you intervention in World War I. He brought you 40 years later the attack on Pearl Harbor by saying that the Japanese are an inferior people in his time as president. The income tax is not something the United States has to have, and I'll explain. Tariffs is exactly what the United States should work on. You guys have the world's largest economy, $25 trillion. Yeah, I'm sorry, 25% of the global economy, not $25 trillion. 25% of the global economy. About 70% of that is consumer-based. You have the biggest market in the world. You should charge access to that market. And what President Trump, I think, kind of misses in all of his debates is to say, look, I can slap on tariffs because the Chinese cannot sell their merchandise to anybody else. Who will buy it? There is no other market. Our market is the market, and therefore we should charge for that market. It's not like the negotiating power is with you. And if you think about that, if you charge tariffs, the United States government can be funded mostly by tariffs. You can lower income tax. That means more disposable income, more entrepreneurship, anything that you need. You have the golden goose. You have more arable land than anybody else. You have 2 secure borders with 2 open seas. You have 2 friendly neighbors. You can build infrastructure through the Mississippi River. You can do so much and so much more, and you can bring your middle class back. Israel is a different story. Our future relies upon what Benjamin Netanyahu in the UN addressed as the blessing and the curse. The blessing is an Indo-Pacific corridor that we can build exactly like the Singaporeans did, where you take the world's largest population, which is also English-speaking, India, which stands at the forefront of what's called the global south. But India will be a powerhouse in this century. You create a corridor that goes through Saudi Arabia, which is the world's largest Sunni Muslim country with the holy sites to the Muslims, and through Jordan, which will become a proxy country of Israel in the future, because we will provide everything they need and they will be our friends. We will create a port that goes through to Europe. Europe is the world's largest market along with the United States. If you can build that, you can tear apart this Houthi blockade that they're doing on the Bab and Mandeb Straits. And not only that, but you can normalize relations between 85% of the world's Muslims, which is the Saudi Arabia is the most important country in that world, and Jerusalem, which is the most important country to both the city, both to the Jews, and it has a lot of significance to the Christians worldwide. If I can equate that to anything, Chuck, I would say it's the equivalent of the Louisiana Purchase and the Constitution and Bill of Rights all happening at the same day.
That's amazing. So you're saying that this is actually an opportunity for Israel to sort of completely change the dynamic in the Middle East. Is that what you're saying with this war? Do you see an opportunity here?
Forever. And let me explain. What Hamas realized is that Netanyahu's strategy is to say, look, the quote-unquote people that call themselves the Palestinians, which are just tribal Arabs that came here during either the Ottoman Empire, where the Ottoman Empire just let people roam its territory without borders, and the British Mandate, and when the Jews came back from Europe and started to make the land flourish, then there were opportunities with jobs. After 1947, after the UN resolution 181 that created the idea of 2 countries for the 2 peoples, the 5 Arab countries that surrounded Israel started a war against Israel, told the Arabs that lived here, move away, vacate, let us win this war, come back when you're done. That idea, instead of being rejected and germinated and done with after Israel declared itself to be a country in May of 1948 and won the war in 1949, UN perpetuated this idea of refugees, and it created a big problem because these people thought that, hey, we're being funded by the UN, they tell us we're refugees, we grandfather these rights, and it perpetuates the problem. We need to finish this. The age of empires is gone. It's a new Middle East. It's a new world. What Sinwar and Hamas realized is, look, if this deal goes through, if this Indo-Pacific corridor goes through, the Palestinians will be done with. They will have to disperse, go into either any of the 50 Muslim states, or go to Europe where they need the labor, and it will be over. Plus, we have a breakthrough technology in lasers that for $3 or $4 a beam, they can dismantle drones and missiles and rockets. This is all coming. Between those two things, they realized that this is the opportunity, the last opportunity for them to assert this idea of a two-state solution, which everybody has realized is just a failed idea. It's something that the West wants to have, but not the people involved with the actual negotiations. So, on October 7th, Hamas started a military operation, but because they had so much savagery and barbarism in their own mentalities, instead of acting in a militaristic way, starting to secure the important intersections and going into our cities, they could have done a lot of other things. They instead chose to butcher kids and butcher families alive, and they wasted hours that they could have done military things until our military woke up to what's really happening. And that was our luck. I can only equate it to the Nazis making a deal out of concentration camps and railways and everything else, when they should have put all that budget into winning the Northern African operation towards Egypt. Yes. So we were saved. It's a miracle. It is a miracle because, man, that was the greatest scandal ever for our country. I'm still shocked and bewildered by how it happened, and we can do an entire interview on that. But
yeah, we could. I mean, it's one of the things that I'm always struck by is how some of the worst tragedies in history end up being some of the best opportunities and the biggest miracles, like you say. And I think this is nothing.
Yeah, I think what's really happening, the big picture, the ancient Greeks, they invented a doctrine, a war doctrine. They had the phalanx, and they controlled the ancient world because of that. Then the Romans created the war machines, the first war machines, and they were able to expand and go. Napoleon had his brilliance and with the artillery and his own doctrine. France was the most important country. Then, of course, Los Alamos, America brought the world the greatest ever, most lethal bomb, and they were able to usher in their era. What Israel is doing right now with the cyber, with the with the pagers, we call them beepers, with the pagers and Hezbollah, and with our ability to see the enemy, that is something that in modern warfare or in any warfare has never happened. And you'll see countries looking for our laser technology and for cyber technology and everything else. This will give Israel the ability to negotiate, to prosper, to leverage. The big picture is that brains and the willingness to expand humanity forward is winning against savagery and barbarism. That is literally what's happening. We call it lightness against darkness because of Hanukkah, which is our mythic holiday about lightness versus darkness. But
so can you rephrase that? Just say light is winning over darkness. Is that what you're trying to say?
Absolutely, and technology, moderation, brains, the brain power, the ability to think things through. Common sense is winning against savagery, brutality. What happened in the last 30 years in the world is the West somehow entered into an extreme. The liberals became too liberal, and instead of saying, "Hey, you know what? Maybe we have too much, you have too little. Why don't we share everything?" Which is noble. They said, you know what? Not only do we have too much, we want to put two hands behind our back and let you just take your beatings at us. And that idea just does not work. And
it's lowest common denominator thinking. It's like we're gonna make everybody safer by making everybody more vulnerable, and that's something that obviously is just not going to work to anybody with 3 brain cells to rub together.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we have a lot of people who are very depraved out there that have been given over to a depraved mind because they have, chosen not to acknowledge just the fundamental truths of the universe. By doing that, the whole idea that men can have babies and stuff is a perfect example of that in the United States. And so, where do you see? We've seen Israel's on a roll.
Yes.
We've seen the pagers operations, to the point where, when we talk about bombing Hezbollah back to the Stone Age, I always thought that would come through the massive application of very high-powered explosives, but instead, a very tiny amount of explosives made Hezbollah retreat into the Stone Age on their own because they're afraid of everything electronic now. You managed to take out Hassan Nasrallah, you managed to take out Mohammed Deif, you managed to take out the entire command structure of Hezbollah, the entire command structure now of Yahya Sinwar and Hamas. You're on a roll.
Yes.
What does that say to Iran, and what do you see happening between Israel and Iran in the coming days?
Yeah. So, in 1979, with the Islamic Revolution in Iran, their strategy from day one was, we have to be a nuclear power, or what the British and Americans just did to us, to our glorious civilization since the day of Cyrus, will happen again. In order for a Westerner never to invade us, they take our oil, take our this, they became fixated with, we have to have nuclear. We also can never fight wars on our soil again. We need to distance everything from us. That is when they started to realize that they need non-actor states, meaning terror organizations, to distance themselves from Iran proper. That is how their doctrine came to be. And they got it right for a very long time. The West did not realize what was really happening. Mm-hmm. Proxy with terrorists really means, because the West also doesn't realize how the Muslim Brotherhood is built around a holy religious idea, which every human life sacrificed towards it is fine. And so they don't realize that putting kids in harm's way is a Western idea. They don't see it as putting kids in harm's way. They see it as, kids are part of my war, a legitimate part of my war. I can actually use kids in my war to weaken the West, and I can do this all day long. So it's very important to realize, in these radical areas, they say, I can't wait to meet him again. He's there. I'm coming there. This is temporary. This is eternal. Anyways, to answer your question very bluntly, or directly, the proxies have now become a liability instead of an asset. That is the key. Iran never wanted to fly their, how do you call these, the
missiles,
IRGC?
ballistic missiles?
No, yeah. IRGC in English, you say?
Oh, yeah.
The IRGC? They didn't want to send their Islamic...
start that sentence over again for me, would you?
Absolutely. The Iranians, the Ayatollahs have never looked to turn to send the Islamic Republic Guard to manage the proxies on their own. The proxies have now become a liability instead of an asset. And what that means is that they're going to desert them. They're going to desert the Houthis, they're going to desert Hezbollah, not publicly, but legitimately. So meaning, no funding, no this, no further ammunition. They are now looking at America, and they're thinking to themselves, we either have the worst thing we can ever dream of, a strong Israel and a Trump in the White House, or we have a strong Israel and maybe a lunatic in the White House that would somehow think that they can still negotiate with us. If it's Israel and Trump, then I think what likely is going to happen is we're going to start to see a war, direct war between Israel and Iran. It could take even a year long. It will be the end of that regime basically, and it will help everyone around the world, including inside of Iran. There are about 20 to 25 million people that are objecting the government altogether. Yeah. And I bet you, without even knowing, that we have plans on how to help those people revolt. That's what I think.
Why do you think that Israelis have not responded to that ballistic missile attack of October 1st yet? Why do you think that they're still waiting?
Because I think that we're not looking to do like a one and done. You know, they did a one and done in April. We did a one and done back. They did 180 ballistic missiles. You know what happened with the ballistic missiles? 180 ballistic missiles, including ones right here over my house. 5 casualties on the Iranian side from a botched takeoff.
Launch.
And 1 interception that fell on Jericho, actually one of the oldest cities in the world today. I think like 3,000 something years old. And what happened was a person from Gaza who fled to Jericho was walking the street and it just fell on him. You can see that
Saw
thing.
it. Yeah, it's incredible.
And for us, some damages to some landing strips. We got it fixed, etc. We no longer care about showing, hey, we can do this too. We want to end this. It's time to end it. We have legitimacy now to end it. And so I think for us, we want to do it right. And to do it right, you need to do it all the way through. And I think that's what we're preparing for. The Israelis are not, we're not on a religious war. We are not on a holy war. This is not like, you know, we will sacrifice our lives for God. This is not Israel. The Jewish people do not think that way. Do Israelis, nor do secular Israelis without the yarmulke. We are very much like a combination between Athens and Sparta. Inside, we are very Athenese. We care about culture, education. You come here, you go to my daughter's room or my son's room. It's filled with books, toys. We teach them about the world, about history. We teach them about how to build a society, etc. And that's what we care about. But in order to do this, we have to, in this jungle that we live in, called the Middle East, where no country has ever existed as a democracy, ever. We have to be Spartans from without. So what we will now do is we will expand our borders during this war in order to protect ourselves. We need natural borders. The borders of Israel were drawn up by the French and the British divvying up the Middle East after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. But these are not natural borders. The United States has great borders. You have oceans. Those are amazing borders. We need the equivalent of that. What we will do is, this is not official, obviously. We will not be declaring this, but this is what we will do. In southern Lebanon, we will go until the river lines. There are 2 river lines. I believe we will go until the first river line and then create a buffer zone between the first river line and the second river line. And then we will use laser technology and automated AI. If you come there, you're done. I think we will do the same thing in Syria, in the valley. I don't know how you say it in English. In Hebrew, we call it Bashan. Bashan Valley, Bashan. Yeah, maybe look it up and Google it, like translate it. I'm sorry, I didn't come prepared. And on the Gaza Strip, I believe we will one day control all of that land. And this is not to say that we will cleanse it from the population that is there. There will be a lot of sensible offers to the population. The first thing that they will have to do is to assert that if they want to remain anywhere near this area, they have to acknowledge that they will never, in their entire lives, not them, not their children, not their grandchildren, not anybody, will ever threaten the country of Israel. That will be condition number 1. And if they can't do that, like the Japanese after World War II, then they won't be here. They
got to be unconditional.
Unconditional. It's done.
Yeah.
The blessing and the curse, lightness, it's done. The age of savagery in the Middle East is over. All the Emirates, the Saudis, everybody understands that. The Europeans, everybody understands that. And after Trump is elected, we'll have the right leadership in order to actually enact that. What we lack in the West is leadership, and we need common sense. So that's the grand plan. Everybody wants that. That will be prosperity like you won't believe.
Yeah.
Just so you understand, I assume you know this, but just for your audience, this area is very flat. You can build railways, you can build systems that take Israelis all the way to Saudi Arabia. And with magnetic levitation rails, for example, you can be living in Israel, and at 8 a.m. you take a magnetic levitation to that tech city that the Saudis are building, work there, Neom, and I'm sorry, I wanted to say Noam and didn't want to sound stupid. and come back in the evening. The entire Middle East will be open. Could you imagine the prosperity between the Emirates and this? And you take all these choke points that in history, whoever controlled the choke points, it was the most important, like the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, the Gibraltar, the Malacca Straits, and you cancel them. You cancel them. You don't monopolize choke points, but you open everything up. I think that is the future. We're also a very strong AI country. I think in general, the 21st century has the ability to dismantle the ideas of radical religious wars. In general, I think the 21st century will be even more religious than the 20th century. We will go back, a lot of countries will go back to their religions, a lot of families, nuclear families, will go back to some sort of a community environment where they want to go, where they want to be participating in some sort of a worship to the creator of the universe, etc. We've gone, the Western world is very atheist, but not as the Crusaders or the Muslim Brotherhood. This is not religion. This is a bad, radical interpretation.
Perversion of it. Yeah.
It's a perversion. Yes, it's an interpretation that never should have existed, and it won't. It won't. This is the triumph of culture over non-culture.
Yeah, over barbarity.
Yes.
For sure. That's great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate. I could just listen to you for a long time because you've got such good things to say. How do people find out more about you if they want to follow you?
Yeah, wealthresearchgroup.com is the website that I operate. We actually, it's a free financial newsletter, but it's not only financial. It's a financial, geopolitical, geostrategy, everything. So it's like an open book format to my thinking, almost like we just did this interview, but in like 5 to 6 minute reads 3 times a week.
That's awesome.
I even share my entire portfolio of my own portfolio with people. In fact, if you want to download it, it's wealthresearchgroup.com/portfolio. So that's the best way to kind of follow along and see what's happening. I mix things between Israel, a lot of America, because America, no matter what is happening, America is the beating pulse of this world, and I think it will always be. As long as you guys stick to your constitution and you remain a constitutional republic, you are the golden goose. You are manifest destiny, the city on the hill. There is nothing like the United States. There can never be something like the United States. So we need the United States.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with me, Lior, and I really appreciate it. Maybe we'll have you back on again sometime if you'd be willing.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.